Mike, you ready?
You know what? I'm wondering if it's over.
8th graders?
Because we have so many people on here.
Okay, we'll meet
So
for
I'm going to
this.
get you to open the meeting.
I'll open the meeting and then we're
turn it
gonna.
over.
Yep.
So then when he does
Come and
that,
grab
you
me.
guys will
Thanks.
assume some spots.
Lori,
Oh, am I moving?
Yeah, well, no, you can stay there. I think
can
Andrew, Jan, and I are gonna move. Is everyone ready? Mike, you ready? Okay, welcome to the Essex Junction Trustees Meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we have a nice special event before the other proceedings of the night. We have Amanda Eldridge's class from Albert Lawton School here to, they have is it a year-long or semester-long governance project?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Well, it's going to be more than 2 weeks because I recognize most of these faces and I was there about half a year ago. So it's been going on for more than 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah.
And so they must be real expert. They were pretty smart back then, so they must really know what they're doing now.
You're gonna find out.
Okay, so what I thought what we would do is we would allow the presenters to come up here, and the three of us, Trustee Karen and Trustee Andrew Brown and I would go sit in the audience. Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good to see you guys and welcome.
Thank you. Just to give everybody a little
Oh,
bit.
and please, I'm sorry, Amanda. And for everybody other than the 8th graders, if you haven't signed in, could you please do so? Thank you.
Just to make sure everybody has a little bit of background about the project. I teach 8th grade this year, and our 8th grade curriculum is U.S. history. And so every year we try to focus on specific aspects of civics in some way. This year we examined local government in particular. And we looked at the district-wide standard expectation of, I can explain how individuals and groups have brought about local change. So we really honed in on that topic. And I was fortunate that Brad was able to lend his expertise and his assistance in the classroom. We started this project in December. We had 2 weeks where we really did focus in on local government and specifically in Essex Junction. We started with the concept of representative democracy and what that means. And we had just finished studying the American Revolution and how our founding fathers were tasked with the huge obstacle of trying to design a brand new government. And so it seemed like it was a really good fit. Students worked really hard in a very short and condensed period of time. This was a survey of what could have been a much longer and more in-depth class for sure. Easily a semester or year-long course in high school or college. But we just skimmed the surface and got an introduction to some of these really important concepts. We started by looking at various levels of government, so local, state, and national, and some of the similarities between them. And then we explored the history of Essex in particular, so that we could understand a little bit about the history of the community that we live in. After that, students were presented with a hypothetical scenario. So we said to them, you're on a committee in charge of designing the best governing structure for a newly combined Essex Junction and Essex Town. Much like the Founding Fathers, you'll need to do some research, gather data, and come up with a proposal that creates a government structure that meets the following goal: to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So that was the sort of foundational information that they were given. And they had to answer the question: if there was one governance structure in Essex that factored in the history of our community, provided good governance based on a set of principles, and could be passed by voters in this community, what do you think it would be? That was their question, and as we know, that's been an ongoing question. Students were broken into groups. They researched 6 different municipalities around the state of Vermont to collect data, and then came back together in teams to design an answer to that question. They surveyed council members in those municipalities. They interviewed the chief administrative officer in each of those. They invited guests and panelists. Many of you were there with us, and we thank you for that. And they interviewed parents and community members to gather that data that they then drew from when designing their government.
And this was a pretty complex task that we were asking the students to do. So at first, they looked at 8 different sources of good governance principles, and they all read some different data and came back and discussed as a group what are some principles of good governance that we could try and structure this government after. They'll be sharing with you some of the principles they chose, things like transparency, things like equity, things, participation. Those are just 3 of the examples of probably about 12 or 15 different principles that they had to select from. And so they worked with their classmates to make these selections. Their next task was to really design a governance structure that would support and meet these good governance principles. So if you think about that, it's really a pretty difficult task, right? We're trying to figure out how we can do transparency, equity, and participation in terms of our structure of our government. So it's a pretty big challenge that we asked of them. In terms of structure, we asked them to look at 4 components. First, the form of government, so a council manager system, a council mayor system, or a council weak mayor manager system. In that case, just in case folks are wondering, is one in which a mayor is elected but doesn't serve as the chief operating officer, a chief administrative officer. They're just an elected person. The election system we asked them to examine, and so when we talk about election systems, we asked them to consider whether the councilors are elected at large or through districts or wards or some combination of that system. We asked them to look at the number of councilors, and so we looked at communities that had 5 elected members, like both of our communities here, and some communities that had up to 12 elected officials. And then we also wanted them to look at the length of term. And so the communities that we were examining had 2 or 3 year length of terms for their councilors or their mayors. The 6 communities we looked at, we tried to pick the communities that had a decent sized population because we think it's pretty challenging to sometimes compare. Unfortunately, a lot of the village and town structures throughout Vermont are in communities that have really small populations, which makes it a little bit difficult to translate that information. So the communities we looked at, the smallest one had a population of 7,800, and the largest being Burlington with 42,000. We looked at 6 communities. 2 of each of the communities had one of the different forms of government. So 2 had a council manager system, 2 had a weak mayor council manager system, and 2 had a council mayor system. There was a mixture of election systems in terms of at-large versus districts and wards, a mixture of the number of councilors ranging from 5 to 12, and term lengths of 2 to 3. So ultimately, at the end of the day, after all the readings, survey results, interviews, discussions, they needed to pick the governance structure that provided the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and that's what they are going to present to you today.
We have 3 presentations, so these are the 3 different students, and some of the students are representing their groups who are unable to be here. Each presentation is roughly 5 to 8, maybe a little bit longer, minutes in length, and then we ask that you wait and keep your questions until all the presentations are finished. So if you want to jot down about 2 questions per group, we can take questions at the end. The students are anticipating that, so they're prepared for that. We just ask that you keep in mind a couple of things. This was an intensive, and I say it was a 2-week long because this is the time that we spent that we had to focus on this project in itself. But we've been studying civics and civic engagement all year. They could have easily spent more time on this. They did an amazing job, but it was just an introduction. The second thing is that this project was 6 months ago that they wrapped it up. So since that time, they've been actively engaged in other projects, including the recent citizenship project that they all had to do 10 hours of community service. And that's been demanding all of their attention. So I'm really proud of them for being willing to dust off their knowledge about this and come here tonight. But just please keep those 2 things in mind. All right, so I'll introduce our first group, Kaido, Alina, and Dave.
Yeah.
Hello everybody. I'm Town of Essex Junction. This is Elena Hurdle and this is Faith Owofo, and we're here tonight to present to you our ideas of good governance. So first we have our principles of good governance. We have participation, transparency, and equity. We chose the principle of participation because in order for the community to be happy, we feel like everybody's voice needs to be heard. We chose transparency because it gives news to everybody, and it helps the community know why the decisions that are being made are being made. And lastly, we chose equity because everybody needs different tools to get the same level of services and other things like that. So what we had to learn about was the different types of government structures, the form of government, council mayor and council manager systems. The council mayor where both the manager and the council are elected, and the council manager where the council is elected and then they hire the manager. Also the two election systems, at large versus districts and wards. And at large means like everybody in the community has the chance to become a trustee or part of the select board, whereas in the districts and wards, people from those certain districts or wards also have that same chance. And also we had to talk about the number of councilors that we felt would be the best decision for the community, and also the term length. So the form of government that our group chose was the council manager type of government, which is where the voters elect the council, and in turn the council hires the chief administrative officer. We chose this because the council and the manager can work together to achieve goals that benefit the community, whereas if we had a council mayor form of government, the council would be working behind a figurehead or the mayor. There will also be a good relationship between the council and the public, and because of this, the public will know what's going on so that everybody's needs will be met, which meets our principles that we talked about earlier. There are many pros and cons to this system of government. A pro is that the chief administrative officer may have more experience in government because they are being vetted by the council. And another pro would be that there would be consistency in government because they could the chief administrative officer could keep going instead of having to restart every single time like a mayor would be elected. And then a con of would be that the chief administrative officer may not be the person that the general public want because the council would be hiring or electing the mayor or the chief administrative officer.
When tasked with choosing an election system, we were caught between an at-large system and a district and ward one. Recognizing the pros and cons of each one of these, we decided a kind of mix of both. We decided to leave the village as its own district, and that the rest of the town outside of the village would be another one. Each of these two districts would have 3 councilors each. But one of the most prominent concerns about a district and ward system was that a divide would grow between the districts. So we added 3 more councilors who would be voted at large to create a sense of unity, as their priority would be the town as a whole instead of just their specific district. So to summarize, we had a total of 2 districts, each with 3 councilors, and then 3 councilors voted at large for a total of 9 councilors.
If the village and the town were to merge and we were to agree on one government system, we suggest that there be a total of 9 elected officials. We researched that together these municipalities have an estimated population of almost 20,000 people. This divided by 9 officials results in each one person representing approximately 2,200 citizens. When surveyed, we found that the current town board members and village trustees suggested between 7 and 9 people, and we favored the greater end of that scale with the idea of participation in mind. A clear pro to a larger amount of people is that more voices are heard, and there's a greater chance that minority groups are represented. Although this might not necessarily be the case, it creates the opportunity for such, and either way, the population the specific individual is representing will be focused and less difficult to manage. This makes the job itself more approachable to those interested in bettering our local government.
Regarding our second principle, transparency, the job is available to a larger pool of applicants, causing the decision-making process to become more clear and understandable to the average citizen. With the general population aware of this system, we recognize what regulations need to be followed and when they're being neglected, aiding us as a society in our never-ending battle against corruption. Finally, we look at equity. With a theoretically diverse group of people with different experiences and backgrounds we hope to attract, the board will be more knowledgeable about contrasting groups and what they need in order to be given the same opportunities as everyone else. With this knowledge, they're also responsible for looking at the overall picture and considering what changes are fundamental for the growth of not only the people they're responsible for, but for Essex as a whole. We recognize that with 9 officials, it will be difficult to make decisions in consensus won't be reached as quickly, but the policies implemented would be carefully examined, and there's a greater guarantee that those policies advance the community. All in all, we think that the pros outweigh the cons.
So for our term length, we chose to create a hybrid of 2 and 3 year term lengths. Since we have a mix of at-large and districts, we chose to have the counselors that are elected at-large have 3-year terms, and the ones that are elected by their district have 2-year terms. For 3-year terms, the officials are more likely to focus on their work instead of being worried about their next campaign. Advantages of longer terms are that the council can get a lot done and do complex projects. We acknowledge that there are disadvantages, such as they might not focus on one single project. One advantage of shorter terms is that they have to be focused to be efficient, and a disadvantage is that they may not have enough time to get projects finished. The shorter term officials would bring in new people every 2 years, and that leads to more people understanding how the government works. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Nestor, and this is my presentation about my recommendation for the Essex government structure. So, my group decided on 3 good governance principles that guided our work. This is an image that I thought was inspiring as we were going through our project. Good governance was really important that it got rid of all the bad things in the community, and this just shows one, which is corruption. So our first principle is transparency. And transparency means it's the government's obligation to share information with the citizens. And this is really important because if there is a low transparency or no transparency at all, laws can be passed without the citizens knowing about it. And then it could be all happen behind closed doors. And then the citizens in the community would get out of hand because the citizens wouldn't know what's going on, and then they could start things like an uprising. And this is crucial in order to have good governance because the citizens need to be involved in the community and what actions are being taken to better it. And it's important that everyone is involved. Our second principle was equity. Something that's really important that people get confused a lot is equality versus equity. And so equality is giving everyone the same tools to get something done or to learn about something, but equity is giving everyone the tools they need to get to the same level. And this is important in a governance structure because we need to be able to make sure that everyone has access to the tools that they need to get to the knowledge about the community and the government so that they can all be involved in things like voting. And we can use this to create the very best structure by allowing people to have the tools that they need and access to knowing and learning more about the community so they can make more educational and informed decisions in the future. And so I'm going to pass around this photo that's about, it shows the differences between equality and equity. So the last principle that we decided to base our ideas off of was responsiveness. And it's really important that when you respond, you want to do it quickly, safely, and positively. And this is important because you want to be able to do it positively without you making your responsiveness being overly busy. And this is important because if you're trying to respond to this problem, that problem in the community and trying to fix things, it could be going all over and being all jumbled up, and no projects could be getting done and people could be getting off track. And this is really important because in a community we need to have things to be able to flow, and we don't want it all here and there and jumbled up. So for the form of government, we chose a council-manager system of government. So this means that the voters elect councilors who then hire a city manager who then hires department heads. So this helps transparency because we think that people need to know what is going on so they can elect the people that will represent them best and make the best decisions on a town manager. This can increase equity because the voters can elect councilors that will be able to best help them and gives them the tools that they need to get them to a base level understanding of their local government. By having this simple yet deep understanding of their counselors, they can help them by responding to the issues by speaking out about them and making motions to help get things fixed. Some pros and cons of a council manager system are that decisions are based upon good judgment and experience. So the people that they're electing to the council have more experience and know a lot more than the average citizen about government because they have studied it, and they obviously got elected to the council for a reason. So they're going to make the most educated and informed decision on a new manager. And the council also knows best what the people in the area need. But some cons of this is that people don't have a direct say in the decision. So they elect the people on the council, but then the council decides who's going to be the town manager on their own. And the Board of Trustees also isn't a full-time job, so the councilors might not spend as much time on their decision and focusing as they might on their regular day job. The Board of Trustees isn't a full-time job. So we have chosen this election system, which is at-large and districts and wards. We have chosen 3 at-large councilors, which would be elected by Essex Village and Essex Town, and 4 district councilors. 2 would be elected to represent Essex Town, and 2 would be elected to represent the village. By having a hybrid system of at-large and district wards, we can have pros from both groups to minimize the cons of both of the systems. This increases transparency by having less people to focus on and to get to know the representatives on a local level instead of a formal level, being just knowing their names and seeing on a piece of paper and be like, oh, that's our counselor, rather than being able to interact with them more. Equity is increased with district counselors by giving voters what they need to succeed. So the district counselors would be able to focus more on their district, and then the at-large would be able to reinforce what the district was for what the district was able to put through for everyone in the village and the town. And it would give them a fair understanding of all the members. Responsiveness is also increased because district counselors can quickly respond to issues in the community and report these to the full council. Then from there, they can solve more problems at once. So if there's a certain problem in just one of the districts in the village or the town, those district counselors can solve it faster and quicker instead of bringing it to the full council. And the at-large members can use their job, since they're elected at-large, to represent both of the districts. They can identify problems that needs to be fixed in both the districts and the community as a whole, so then they can bring that to the full council. And when the district leaders are taking less time to bring just certain district problems to the entire council, more things can get done. Some pros and cons of an at-large system are that everyone who votes has a voice, and that the councilors, that best represent the community because they're based on popularity vote. But some cons are that there might be too many opinions in the people that are voted, and so there could be an imbalance in representation, and chaos could break out in voting and campaigning. Some pros and cons of district and wards are that there will be equal representation on both sides of the table, and that different issues concerning only some of the districts can be dealt with and addressed separately, like I said before. But some cons are that it could potentially be more expensive, and every district and ward has to choose someone, whether they're fit for the job or not. So if 2 people in the village are really fit for this job, but only 1 person in the town is, they still have to pick 2 people, which could potentially hurt the council. Here's an image for you. So my group chose to have 7 counselors as opposed to the 5 we have now. By having 7 counselors, this increases transparency because there are not too many people, and our group decided to call it kind of the Goldilocks zone of the amount of elected officials, because there weren't too many and there weren't too little. And this allows the voters to become more acquainted with the counselors because there's more of them, and they can go to different places and become more acquainted with all of the voters. And this makes the voters know if they want to get re-elected, the counselors, they can know who they're voting for, and they can know why they're voting for them. This also helps increase equity because it creates enough diversity to help everyone's individual needs and opportunities to succeed. So by having 7 counselors, it increases the chances of more people being represented in the community and that they are given the tools that they need to be able to move forward in their lives and understanding what the government is, which is really important. And having 7 counselors also helps responsiveness by having enough people in the community to understand what the voters want and need without having too many people and making the system disorganized. Also, these pros and cons have been coming from, that we looked at, came from parents, educators, and community leaders that submitted data for us to study. So some pros of this system are that there can be more people to share the workload. So by 7 people, you can have a better amount of each person having a little bit less work than the 5 now. And there could be a larger brain pool for ideas, which would be the potential for more creativity. And this, by having 7 people, there could be a possibility of greater representation, as I said before. More people could be represented, and that could positively impact the community. But some cons could be that this could be bogged down in opinions, bureaucracy, and politics, and it would be harder to reach consensus. And it might take longer to make decisions just because there's 7 as opposed to the 5 we have now. We have chosen a 3-year term length for everyone. This helps with the transparency of the local government because you have a better chance to build trust with your local councilors because there's a longer time for you to get to know them. This also helps increase equity because the councilors have a longer time to help people to get to that base level understanding of local government procedures that I was talking about earlier. This also gives a lot more time for the councilors to be responsive. They have more time to respond to issues, therefore producing a better and higher quality of work for the voters in the area. So some pros and cons of a 3-year term length are that there's more time to adjust and fully understand the job. So in your first year, you're kind of learning about it. In your second and third year, you're able to fully carry out your responsibilities. And if you're a good counselor, you'll be able to stay longer. And by having a longer term length, 3 years, there's less change in policy and elected officials. And usually, if you're being elected again, one or 2 people or even more might be elected again. There could be there's people who are who know about the policies and why they implemented them. So there's not this back and forth of changing policies. And if with a 1 or 2 year term, some people might always be in campaign mode, so they might be able to focus on a project or 2 for a little, but then, oh, I have to campaign again. But some cons of this 3-year term length are that they could have to hold on to ideas and get stuck on them if they're focusing on one thing after another. Someone's ideas or a few people's ideas might not get out, and then it would be time to campaign again, and you might not get reelected. So with the 3-year term length, also it's longer. You could run out of fresh new ideas. It might be going really good in the first 2 years, but then the 3rd year, people might be running out of ideas to help the community. And if you're a bad counselor and people didn't realize that, you have to stay longer, and the people would not like that. But hopefully, since we're getting this equitable access of information to everyone, they'll know who to vote for. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking time out of your meeting today to hear about our civic study and our gathered ideas from our data, and it's greatly appreciated.
Hello, my name is Matthew, and this is my group's government structure that we came up with. So for our good government principles, we chose transparency, equity, and participation. Those are the ones we decided to look at. So transparency is important for a government because when they are transparent and they are open about what goes on, people will trust them more, and then they'll be willing to participate more, which is our 3rd option. And then for equity, it's just a good idea to give people the tools they need, and whether it takes more, you might need to work more to give some people the tools they need than others, then you should do it, because this just it's a good way to balance your decisions off of in a government. And if people don't participate, the other principles just don't work. Some groups may have more power just because they participate more, and that's just not good. So we need everyone to participate in order for groups to be accurately represented. For our form of government, we chose something a little different. We chose a council manager system with a weak mayor, a figurehead mayor. So a weak mayor is like a mayor, but the weak mayor doesn't have any power, but is capable of representing the government at higher levels, such as the state government, and being a figurehead, cutting ribbons at ceremonies, and allowing and educating the public on goings-on in the government. There's definitely openness to it in terms of participation, because people are more, people know a little more about mayors and the mayor system, so people will be a little more familiar with that type of government if there's a mayor, and they will be more interested. And if they're more familiar, then they'll want to know more, and hopefully government would be more transparent to help support that, and more people will get what they need, because more people will be wanting to get involved in the government because of the mayor. For our election system, we chose an at-large election system. This is because Essex isn't very big, and so in order for many people to be represented well and to have many choices for people, we decided that an at-large system would be best for that, as in smaller districts there just wouldn't be as many choices. And people could then now, some cons of Some cons, though, is that they could end up biased for one community, but in a small enough community, I don't feel that is a huge issue. The system my group chose was 7 council members, because it is more than the current 5, and not too many, and it is an odd number, meaning that for voting there can't be any ties, and it's there's a decent amount, so that it'll provide accurate representation for different groups in our community. Here I have a couple of graphs, actually. I think they're pretty cool. So the one on the top, the one on the bottom shows if on the x-axis there's the number of council members that you would have, and on the y that's the percent number of those council members you need to pass a certain policy. So if you have 4 council members, you need 75% of those council members' approval. So this graph can be relevant because if you were to have like 2 different political parties in a town, and there's only like 4 council members, it wouldn't be that accurate of a representation, and it could be really easily split, and it could be a lot harder to get a policy to pass when you'd have to convince a whole other person. But when you have more people, such as 6 or 7, that wouldn't be much of an issue, because they'd be more accurate, and you'd have an easier time getting things to pass that the people would want to pass. And on the graph on the top, that's just the number of council members, and then the number of council members you need to approve certain policies. So if you had 6 and 7 council members, you'd still need the same amount, but 7 provides more, so you have more accurate representation, and it's an odd number for no ties. For term length, I chose 3-year term length because I know that with the governors here they have like 2-year terms, and I just don't really think that works. There's just too much time devoted to campaigning, and it works just and it's really about, the government is about it's not about campaigning. It's about changing. It's about running things, and so people need time to be able to run things. So some cons, though, would be that people may not have any new ideas. Probably not. They could be harder to vote out if there's a bad council member, but the pros definitely outweigh the cons in this situation. Thank you, and at this time we'd like to be open to questions for all the groups.
Because
Wow.
Question?
I have a question. So you looked at a bunch of towns and villages in Vermont. Other than Essex and Essex Junction, which of course is the best place, what other one did you like the most? Which one did you think was the best governed, did you think? Any ideas?
I would say Burlington because they're the most populous, so I feel like they would have the best percentage of participation.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would probably say, out of the ones that I looked at, probably Montpelier, because they had, I don't know if it was exactly 7, but they had around 7 council members and a weak mayor system, which is pretty much what I said in the presentation.
Anybody?
No? So each group talked about term length for the council members. Did you talk about term limits? And do you think there should be term limits on council members?
I don't believe that there should be term limits for things like this at a local level for counselors because if someone's doing a good job, then the people will recognize that. And if they keep being voted, that's because they're doing good things. And if they do happen to run into a rough patch or run out of ideas, then the voters will recognize that. If they're being given the tools they need to access information about our local government and how it runs, and they'll recognize that and not vote for them for their re-election again. So I don't think there should be term limits at this local level because if they're doing a good job, then the voters will recognize that and keep voting for them.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, to add on to what Elizabeth said, well, if I also agree that there should be no term limits because all of our council members are larger than what they are currently, and so eventually you're going to run out of people.
We're always running out of them now.
Very good point.
Good point.
2 of the 3 groups chose participation as one of your principles. What would you suggest are some really good ways to encourage increased participation?
Just maybe educating people more on how the government works and making people more aware that, that it exists. Like, I didn't even know that all the meetings happened in this building before, right? So, things like that. So, making them a little more, the different meetings and stuff a little more advertised.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, so for participation, when we surveyed counselors from other communities in Vermont, and one comment that stuck out to me in particular was the idea that an at-large voting system would help encourage participation, and that is definitely a factor in why we chose to put it in our presentation.
Excellent. Okay.
Has this lesson, civics study, encouraged any of you to want to get more involved in your community or in the governance within ADL in high school?
I wouldn't want to be like a counselor, like run for office, but it definitely encouraged me to make sure that I know I'm being educated, doing things like voting for counselors, and just learning more about the government really helped me in the future so that I'll do my research before I just go and blindly go, that sounds like a cool name, check that. Yeah.
Good.
I think that since after this project, we did the citizenship project, we were out in the community. I think that since we said participation was one of the principles that was really important, I think that really showed us that our community is really small and we all work together and come together, and it just kind of helped me realize that even if I may seem I don't know a lot of people in our community, we it's small and we can come together.
That's great.
Through all this, has any of you maybe decided you might want a career in working in local government?
like a manager.
No, they don't have to be, I mean, listen, I don't wish that on anybody. You know, we have a lot of good jobs, I mean, finance, planning, ecology, management, personnel, HR, anybody, or do you just want to be elected officials or just concerned citizens?
I think I just want to be able to participate more as a citizen. Because the government, I'll, study even like with elections and things, and it's a lot.
Thanks.
So earlier we talked about we touched on the topic of corruption within our society, and it's definitely important to kind of like participate and really understand what's going on in your society. And as much as that's something I would love to do, I'm also only 14, so not even in high school. I haven't really thought about it that much, but it is something I'm definitely interested in.
And if I can just encourage you, you might only be 14, but your voice is just as important as someone who is able to vote. So keep that in mind and stay engaged and keep doing what you're doing. It's great.
When you all graduate college, will you come back and live here? And be great citizens? And participate?
You don't have to answer that.
Well, we want you to. That's what I'm getting at. We would love that. Stay with us.
Although we might not necessarily come back here, I think we will all keep this idea of good governance in mind, and we will try to participate in our local government wherever we end up.
That's great.
Dan?
Just curious, if you guys looked at town meeting, village meeting, that our budgets are approved at the town meeting for the town, and the village budget, the village meeting. And have you had any opinion on whether that function of approving a budget at town meeting or having a budget approved by Australian ballot, where it goes out to vote, so that people don't have to be in attendance at town meeting, they can vote, if you're aware, by absentee ballot. So if somebody say they're going to be away or they're out of country or what have you, in the military or what have you, they still have a say on whether a budget is passed or approved. Do you have any opinion on that, or if you guys look into that at all?
Just to give you guys some context, what was the number at village meeting? How many attendance?
100 and less than 200.
Okay, so less than 200 people were at village meeting. So, you understand the question? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important that the absentee ballot and things like that go out, because then you can get, like, I didn't use participation, but that's also really important for like what I did use responsiveness, because it can help these people, like absentee ballots is a way that the government responded to the fact that people can't always be at town meeting, and just those numbers, like less than 200. We have like 20,000 in the combined village and town, and that's not a lot of people. So it's really important that you give the people the chance to vote and make their voice be heard, and being equitable, like giving everybody the tools they need to be able to be a part of their community, and that's really important.
I have a question for you. As we're embarking on this journey about consolidation, and as we talked about a joint trustee and select board meeting, having one community with one governing body, from a process standpoint, do you have any recommendations for us moving forward, since you've already done this?
I feel you.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah, I would say just what we did in talking to other governments, I would do that. That seems like a really good idea, and seeing what has worked in the past and what hasn't, and then just putting it together, just like we did in our projects.
Good idea.
I think to just make it as transparent and honest with the community as you can, like as open, so that everybody's on the same level of knowledge as you are, so that everybody knows, so that they can give feedback, and just have, as you're trying to work this out, have multiple meetings, like the EWSD, like when they're writing their vision statement, they wrote a draft, and then they sent it out, and then they sent it out again, a new thing at Fine Arts Night, they redid it, and just keep sending it out to the community and advertising that you are going to be sending it out and that it is out, so that people can respond to that and give you feedback, so that you can hear from the greatest amount of people, like, and doing the greatest amount of good.
Thank you.
That was excellent.
Well done, everybody.
Listen, thank you. Okay, we'll go back into session, and first of all, I think we need to know, we didn't do agenda additions or changes. Evan, do we have anything to add to the agenda, any changes from what we have?
We do not.
Okay, great. So, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as it's presented?
So
I
moved.
don't think we have to
Yeah,
approve
we
it.
don't have to?
No.
Okay, no amendments? Okay, great, thanks.
Take it back.
So now, anyone in the audience who has a question, comment about something that's not on the agenda tonight?
I
Okay.
asked that again.
I think they're here for the steam fest.
Okay.
Okay, so hearing none, so we will then go on to I should have done this earlier in reverse order, but my apologies. So we will now go on to the business agenda, and under new business. Evan, take it away.
Thank you. Tonight is, on your agenda, number A is appointment of the village attorney and our annual appointments. So tonight, I am recommending that we appoint Claudine Safar of, the name off, I didn't know I was gonna be up first. Claudine Safar, if we can have her come up, right up here, she can introduce herself to the board. We put together a search committee. President Tyler was part of that committee, along with Greg Duggan. Lauren was in there, Susan McNamara was in there, and Travis Sabatasso. They were grilled thoroughly by our group, and we found that their answers and their body of work was excellent. So we are recommending that they be appointed for the one-year term, I believe, of village attorney.
Fantastic.
And they came tonight. If you want to ask them any questions, you can. If not,
I have one question. Claudia, are we pronouncing your name correctly?
Claudine Safar.
Claudine.
Yep. And I'm also here with my colleague Ed Adrian, who will be.
Good to meet you, and thank you for coming. We heard about you. All good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. I thought as I said to Evan, I thought your presentation that you gave to us, you seemed to hit all the right buttons on all the sorts of things that we deal with all the time, and it was very impressive, so I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Well, we very much appreciate the opportunity to work for the village. We're really excited, and we're looking forward to hopefully a long relationship. And we certainly pledge to work very hard for your business, and we're honored to be chosen. So thank you.
Claudine,
thank
can
you.
you give a little background on some of your other clients?
Sure. So
Locally.
Monahan Safar Duchem represents a lot of municipal entities. So some of our other municipal clients include the town of Colchester, the town of Shelburne, Swanton, Fairfax, Wilmington, Highgate, Thetford. Jump in here, I knew Ed would help me out. We've also done work for the city of St. Albans, St. Albans Town. We've done work for the city of Burlington on an as-needed basis. So those are just kind of a mix. We also do work for the League of Cities and Towns for municipal defense. And so we represent multiple municipalities around the state in the defensive actions filed against those municipalities. So.
And a couple of your attorneys live in Essex and Essex Junction, I believe?
Correct. So Steve Duchan, one of the attorneys in Essex.
Steve, yeah.
And so we, obviously think the world of Steve. He's very connected into your communities, and as those of you that know him, he's an excellent real estate attorney, and would certainly, help when we had real estate related matters to work for the village. So,
Good. Excellent.
And your offices are where?
Our offices are in downtown Burlington, and we do have an office in St. Albans, which is an unstaffed office, but we have that office, so we're very close, and
We have a couple of openings, some space in town too.
Right.
Just in case you need a little bit closer.
Right across the street, there's a nice store.
It is not required, but just to let you know.
So Brian Monahan and I live in Williston, so we're really close, just a few miles away. Ed lives in Burlington. Steve, as you know, lives here. So that kind of represents the sort of senior attorneys in our firm, and then we have some associates that live in South Burlington and Burlington respectively, and we'll probably be adding some more associates as time goes on. So kind of a representation of folks all around the general area.
So I have a question. In the past, we've had one attorney who that is all we have dealt with, and it sounds like this is more of not just you, but your firm. So how will that work in terms of a continuity of decision making and a continuity of projects?
Sure. So I can, I'm happy to, be sort of a primary point of contact for Evan. And if I think we tend at the firm, we tend to function as a team because there may be some situation that may come up here that perhaps, the first thing, if it's something I'm not familiar with, I'm going to pull my colleagues and say, Ed, have you ever had this situation in any of the municipalities that you've represented? Or we get together every week on Wednesday for lunch. No matter, we're very collegial. We talk to one another a lot, and so it's something that we'll share if we're working on a matter. Sometimes perhaps there may be another attorney in the firm who's going to be better situated to work on a specific matter. And I may, if the directive comes from Evan, I may say, Evan, this is really, although I can maybe be able to work on this, you're going to have much better representation to have Steve work on that land transaction than having me do it. And I think because we're a group, we all work together. We don't fight over clients and business. We work collectively and want to give you the best service that we can give you. So that's really our goal, is to put that person in, sort of spearhead whatever project you guys need.
Thank you.
And also, if I could just add one thing to that, which is that there are going to be times where somebody may call our office and I may be in court or Ed may be in court. But if you have two of us that you can talk to, it always ensures that if there's things come up and sometimes they need to be handled right away, that you have another person that you can say, okay, Claudine's not there, can I talk to Ed? Ed's not there, can I talk to Claudine? And you will always have the ability to.
It's actually what also happens in the town, if we have HR stuff, Bill has an HR person in his firm, he has others, so usually, and I'm very used to that from other firms. I don't think my village attorney's just sitting by their desk waiting for me to call. They usually have other things going on, so it's a nice, but I have a question for Mr. President. Do you want me to present all four at the same time and take one vote, or do you want to go individual?
Why don't we do individual? Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like to do that for the record. That'd be nice. So any other questions? So let's, okay, why don't you go make the appointment?
So I look to make the appointment of Claudine Safar as the village attorney at our firm.
Okay. I think it doesn't require a vote from us, does it? I think this is just your appointment. This is entirely within your bailiwick to make this appointment, but
My first year at this, so
I think that we indicate our approval.
Okay. Great.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, it does say that trustees' approval shall be required for the manager's annual appointments.
So so I will make a motion that we approve the appointment of Claudine Safar as a village attorney.
Second.
Who got that?
I think Lori did.
Lori, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I wasn't aware that we had to vote on it, but,
Yeah.
sorry.
Appointed.
We probably need to clear this up with an attorney.
It's more official that way.
All right,
Right.
Welcome aboard.
thank you.
We haven't had to do it in a
Thank
while.
you.
Generally, when it happens, though, we're approving, it's not just the attorney, we approve the auditor, we approve everything, so it all comes at the same time. This is just.
Thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Susan McNamara Hill as the village treasurer, tax collector, and village clerk. I recommend approval.
I make a motion that we approve Susan McNamara Hill as village clerk and the other functions as well.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
And Chris Gaborio as village fire chief.
I'll move that we appoint Chris Gaborio as village fire chief.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I recommend Hamlin Consulting Engineers, who's here in the audience tonight, as village engineering consultant.
Welcome, Jeff.
Now I know.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll move we approve Hamlin Consulting Engineers for the village engineer consultant.
Second.
Dan, second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
Glad
Jeff.
you're back.
Thank you.
Thank you
We'll do another
for
year.
years of great service. Thank you.
Are we good?
That was good.
Okay. Okay, so we are now on to landfill leachate agreement, leachate treatment agreement, and Jim, thank you for coming.
Got my pen.
Thank you for having me. The question is whether or not to renew existing landfill leachate treatment agreements. We have 5 at the facility, which currently tie up about 165,000 gallons per day capacity, which could be sold or used by redevelopment or other potential projects. 3 of the 5 we haven't received. 2 of them we never have received leachate from. 3 of the 5 we haven't received any in several years. And with the upgrade and renewal at the facility that was completed in 2014, there's some added value to that capacity. So anything that's underutilized should be reviewed and reconsidered. And my recommendation is to cancel the landfill leachate agreements that we have, but maintain the one with the Chittenden Solid Waste District as well as Myers Container Service. The reason for both CSWD and Myers Container is we are the only listed receiving facility on their permits. And the quantities are relatively small and there's no adverse impact.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Any questions for Jim?
No.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that the trustees renew leachate treatment agreements for Chittenden Solid Waste District and Myers Container, and further recommend not to renew the Moortown, CB Landfill, and Coventry Landfill leachate treatment agreements.
Second. Andrew seconds. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. All right, so we are on to the amendment to the Encore Solar net metering agreement, Jim.
Okay, we were approached by the Town of Essex, or through the Town of Essex Energy Committee, for some surplus solar capacity out of a private project that's going on up off of Route 15 towards the town-village line. I'm not sure exactly where it's at. It's a larger facility than we have at the wastewater facility. It's significantly larger. And I can't speak for the town, but I believe all of the town accounts are being taken in under this agreement, and they've had additional capacity. If that capacity is not utilized under a net metering agreement, my understanding is it's relinquished to the utility. And as a private developer, nobody wants to do that. You don't make money when it's relinquished to the utility. We have some surplus accounts. Some of the larger accounts were tied up unnecessarily under the Encore Solar agreement at the wastewater facility. The reason they were tied up unnecessarily is we were working on estimates, and frankly, a lot of these estimates from the solar generators are pretty generous, and we tend to overbook on a frequent basis. So under Vermont law, you cannot have one electric account under 2 net metering agreements. That's considered double dipping. So what we're asking for is to revise the solar agreement with Encore to be just the wastewater facility account, which has sufficient capacity for all of the generating at the site, and release the other accounts that were tied up under that so that we can go ahead and incorporate them into the Sand Hill project.
Oh, okay.
So again, to prevent that double dipping that's not allowed by law, we just want to release those and put them back. The agreement right now is under legal review. Claudine had a few questions, she just hasn't responded. I responded to them, but she was tied up right now, so.
And so
Pending favorable legal.
So if you are of a mind to approve it, we would like it subject to final review by attorney.
Sure.
And now the accounts that the village has not assigned will also be determined by the finance director and other people directly involved in this. We just listed them in order of priority, and we'll make sure to encumber enough to gain the solar credits. There's been a change in the pro forma. I had noted, based on the information I had, that the estimated savings was $3,000. It's more in the order of $7,000 or $8,000 right now. I don't have the exact amount. So it's still a bit of a works in progress.
Yeah.
But still savings.
That's significant. That's nice.
And I don't know if you guys have heard, but one of the things that the Town Energy Committee has been doing along with this is with these solar arrays, we are quickly becoming one of the largest solar entities, Essex and Essex Junction in the state.
Yeah.
We're one of the largest producers of solar energy. We're also up at the top of taking advantage of getting the solar discounts through our agreements, both town and village, saving the taxpayers money on both ends of the deal.
And you can add to that the combined heat and power at the wastewater facility
Yep.
as well. So from a green power generation.
We're right at the
top,
front.
yep.
Hey, Evan, when you said that we're did that estimate include you may not know, the Whitcomb solar, the Whitcomb farm?
Sure it does.
Okay, yeah. 'cause
When,
that's-
when these
that
are,
is huge.
when these are built out, we will be way up there in the top 2 or 3
Okay.
of the state in solar power capacity.
Okay. Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we authorize.
Is there something wrong?
The Unified Manager to sign addendum number 2 to the Encore Essex Junction Solar Agreement and to authorize the manager to add the Lincoln Hall, Brownell Library, and other electric GMP accounts as needed to the Sand Hill Solar Installation Net Metering Agreement pending review by our attorney.
Very good. Do I hear a second? Dan, second it? Any further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we've got one more.
One more. Thank you for bundling.
No, yeah, no. And, yeah, we maybe should have moved this one last, and, it's kept it. The Phosphorus Innovation Challenge Grant Program.
You've heard me talk about phosphorus quite a bit.
Yes.
It's a big topic.
It's an
throughout
important
the-
biomolecule, Jim, as we know.
Yes. We've been researching the new facility, trying to find out its limitations and figure out how to proceed into the future without having to bond for additional capacity and to build on additional treatment. That was designed inherent in the facility upgrades that we did. And we are meeting the challenge right now, but as the community continues to grow, we will run into limitations. We've identified some of the internal limitations as the phosphorus recycle, okay? Part of what we do with treating the wastewater that comes in is capture those nutrients. Then we process those nutrients to make them safe for recycling back into the environment. And by doing so, we release the nutrients back to the wastewater process. So it's a vicious circle. That has been identified as one of the future limiting factors on the treatment efficiency. So we've been researching a number of different opportunities to remove some of those excess nutrients, to internally create additional capacity and kind of stave off the future upgrade requirements. Our challenge is that we're one of the largest facilities in the state, but we're way too small for anybody to consider us being business friendly or cost effective for any return on investment for their products. So we've been kind of on our own looking into this. We've been looking at a number of alternatives, and we came up with one just by chance. It's a commercial descaling operation that's used in Europe significantly. It's invested in utilities, where the utilities not just own the water and gas supply systems, but they also own the boilers and the equipment inside the home. So they're taking out the water hardness and these nutrients that can foul their expensive equipment using this type of technology. The project partners would like to kind of turn that concept on its head and use it on a high-strength waste stream to pull that material out and to make a recyclable material out of it in a more cost-effective way. We've been looking at it and considering this for about 4 to 5 months now. And out rolls this Phosphorus Innovation Challenge, where the state is sponsoring lead programs to come in, make presentations, and go through a vetting process for funds to be awarded to implement this. So the whole idea with this presentation is to have some project partners. We would be the host of the facility. The project partners on the project would be the Chittenden Solid Waste District, who is involved as the wastewater biosolids, or the byproduct of the treatment process, contain phosphorus that has to be managed under the contracts that they have. That impacts our land application program down at the Whitcomb Farm, some of the other nutrient recycling programs that we have. Also involved would be Dr. Batteretti from the UVM Civil Engineering Department. Dr. Batteretti is heavily involved in ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis, and this is something right up his alley with the type of filtration we're proposed with this unit. And the third person involved is Dr. Morris, who, James Morris used to be with the University of Vermont. He's kind of a semi-retired independent person, and I want to correct the record. I was introduced to him through some research being done at Cornell, but he is involved in this project in an advisory role only. Okay, so it's not, I misspoke when I put in there, in the transmittal, the connection with Cornell. So at this time, we don't have any direct costs. We're still developing the project, but I'm going to be out of the office for a good portion of the month of June, so I'm here to request your support in at least starting the process forward. And if there are any costs or anything related to the village outside of hosting this, we will be back to visit with you and provide the budgets and the details at that time.
Okay, yes, Emmett?
Now, Jim, in our discussions and our
Yes.
correct, so the state of Vermont, they set the rules,
Right.
and so we discharge into the Winooski,
Correct.
which discharges into the lake, and we're pretty close to that lake, so our phosphorus is gonna be looked at quite closely.
It is.
And so our charge over the coming years is to figure that out, how to reduce phosphorus going into the Winooski, going into the lake.
Right.
And this is the first and best, or the best we've seen so far as an opportunity.
There are other opportunities out there, but they involve millions of dollars of construction.
Oh, just millions?
This is a much smaller scale. We did an economical $15 million just maintenance upgrade. And you're right, you're correct that we do know it's going to be a 0.2 on the permit. That's pretty much established. We're presently running under 0.8, but performing at a 0.2 or better level. The challenges are friends from Conservation Law Foundation, even though this was all settled as part of the Lake Champlain TMDL, they have now appealed every permit that's been drafted as 0.2 milligrams per
What does
liter.
TMDL stand for?
I'm sorry, the TMDL is the Lake Champlain limit for a total daily limit for phosphorus. Where wastewater facilities are being appealed again, even though we're less than 3% of the problem. So we're at financial diminishing returns for the kind of investment we have to get for the return on the balance of the lake. The beauty of this product application, if it works, is it might have other applications, not just at wastewater facilities, but it could be in stream, it could also be at farm digesters or farm manure pits. It's all part of what we need to sort out as part of
Jim,
it.
what's the, when you say a microfiltration, what's the technology? What is I mean, this isn't chemical, is this chemical filtration or particulate filtration?
Both.
Both?
The idea is this, this hydroflow unit is kind of an induction coil.
Right.
As the water flows through, at different frequencies, the particles in the water are excited chemically and physically.
Right.
And if you add the right mix of chemicals with it, you can take things that won't normally settle and collect and force them to collect.
What's the recyclable product that you would get out of this, you said?
It would be a phosphorus-based material that should be sterile or safe for reuse. It may require further processing, we really don't know, but that could be marketed elsewhere as a phosphorus to be added.
It drops into solution or comes out as a solid?
It comes out as a solid. Some may remain a solution, but that's what we need to determine. And the best thing is, if this is successful, it could be bundled and shipped out of the Lake Champlain Basin and count as credit towards
somebody else's
compliance.
Okay, yes. Great.
And instead of recycling within the basin, it moves out.
Okay.
And that's why it was one of those things where I approached it with the discussion regarding some polymer. We use polymer to help with our dewatering operations. This piece of equipment is proven in reducing polymer usage. Polymer usage is $50,000 to $70,000 a year. Just one little carboy of the stuff costs $4,000, and we go through one every 2 weeks. So even if this scale up doesn't work and fails miserably, we'll still have a piece of equipment that's known to save us money in our operations, and we can put it to use there. So it's a win-win.
Dan, you have?
Oh, I was just curious on how long it would take to get, set up and be, going.
It should be relatively quick. We have storage tanks already. We've also talked to the Whitcombs, because they also have phosphorus compliance requirements. They're doing a great job. They probably exceeded the requirements, but they're always looking to do better. So I'm proposing to the partners that we include animal waste as part of this. So we can work in batch tanks. It's just purchasing some pipe, hooking this up with a couple of chemical feed points.
This doesn't interrupt operations at all?
It's all off to the side on that grass lawn off to the west of the facility.
Nice.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Elaine?
I just need to point out that I work directly for the agency and the individuals who will make decisions on the Phosphorus
know that.
Innovation
You're
Challenge.
recused.
I need to recuse myself
Okay,
from this
sure.
vote. It would be very inappropriate.
Yep, sounds good.
When is that gonna happen? What's the process for?
The Phosphorus Innovation,
Yeah.
so the application process is open now, if I understand.
Correct, and it's open
ends in
to mid-July.
The end of July, okay.
And so decisions will be made over the summer, apparently.
There's a first round selection, then you go and you present to the group with the details.
Okay.
And then there'll be a second round decision.
Great.
If we keep going, I'm gonna have to start going, la, 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 la.
Right.
Okay, we won't talk anymore, Elaine. We won't put you in jeopardy. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that the village, that we authorize staff to participate in the submission of an application to the Phosphorus Innovation Grant Program and to participate in the evaluation process. Staff shall report back with updates on costs as well as progress of the application if it proceeds beyond the preliminary round of review.
Second.
Andrew seconds. Any further questions, comments for Jim? All good? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstentions.
And one abstention.
Recused.
Great, recused.
Run recusal. Okay, thank you very much, Jim.
for considering.
Thank you, Jim.
Very excited.
Go, Jim.
So we are now, that brings us to requests for the 2018 Steam Fest in Kristen Humbarger.
And Julie.
Yes, Julie, and Julie. We just have Kristen down here, so I'm not sure, Julie.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay.
Unofficially in attendance.
Welcome, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So I guess the primary thing that, we sent you a list of requests. The primary thing that we're looking for, I guess tonight, is for a street closure for Railroad Ave. For Saturday, certainly, as closure for the artist and maker market that we did last year, but also as a request for Friday night to create a food truck alley, as we heard from multiple participants that they would really like to have more food, and food trucks would be a wonderful addition to the experience. That in conjunction with restaurants who said they had so many people coming that they had to turn people away. So we needed more food in the village.
That's great.
So I can't really see because my glasses are on. But so those were the street closure is primarily the main request, and then simultaneously just to have continued access to the things that we had access to last year that made what we did last year possible. A little bit of help from Public Works, a little help from Darby and Robin in terms of communication with the community, and then also some front porch forum postings and development connecting us with people who have space that would be good spaces to host art in. And then the other thing that we're asking for new this year is having a little bit more support from the village and notifying the people on Railroad Avenue for the closure. Just as we think it's a good opportunity for the village to develop more relationship with the businesses that are on Railroad Ave.
Mm-hmm.
And we would like to have a little bit more support in that closure aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
What is the weekend?
It is September 21st and 22nd. as far as we know, it is not in conflict with any other major events in the area or
Wow, good job.
Rosh Hashanah. Right, yes.
My concern is just if the manager's checked with the chief, Gary, about closure of Railroad Avenue and police officers and how it would be
I have not.
received. Okay, that's concerning. So.
Yeah, we did contact them last year, just to notify, saying that we were gonna make a request from you, which went well, and I did call them, just to notify them that we were going to also make the same request again, this year. So-
I'm for it. I would approve it with the caveat or the condition that it gets approval by the chief or by the police department, because otherwise it's not.
Is that, are you talking police chief or fire chief?
Police chief is Chief Rick Gary.
Chief Gary.
Okay.
Could you be a little more specific of what you're asking for railroad? You say you would like a little more support in public notification. What does that mean?
All right, so I guess what we're looking for maybe is to have the village help with notifying the businesses and residents on Railroad Avenue. That there's-
letter?
Yeah, well, the procedure has been a letter that last year we hand-delivered it to all of the businesses and residents who would be affected by the road closure, so every business on that street plus the ones around the corner. And we had some pushback from one business who presented an argument that they felt like it was definitely, there was like some, they felt like the village should have been in touch with them over that, and we felt like we were a little caught in the sort of in the middle, and so we were trying to avoid putting ourselves back into that same
Yeah.
context.
Darby, what, we block off Railroad Ave for the block party. And and we blocked off Railroad Ave last year also for the Steam Fest. So what was the procedure? What happened?
We would put notices to the individual business to the businesses and to the homeowners. I believe what happened here is the business that was particularly concerned with the closure was not open, would not be open during block party times. I know we would put the signs on the parking signs, or in the parking spots, and put notices in the Essex Reporter, Front Porch Forum, things like that.
But we didn't, when we do like the block party, do you or Patty go around specifically and talk to each bit? Because it's not like there's tons, it's, how many businesses are there? There's like 6 or 8.
We hand them a flyer, which I believe is the same thing Julie did last year.
Okay.
If I can just add
Yeah.
some perspective from the years of the farmer's market, which we didn't close Railroad Avenue, but we closed Lincoln Terrace or whatever it is. It really is a very touchy subject for the businesses that are on Railroad Avenue, and I know they don't like any of the streets right there being closed. So I do support the idea of having the village backing, the Steam Fest folks, so it's not on them. This is a village sanctioned event that, we support and give them enough notice.
Yeah, I think it's, to me, it would be the lead time for the notice is the most important thing. Because it's, the idea is to ultimately help business, because we're trying to bring people down here, but so it sounds like contradictory, but yeah.
Thank you, I just wanted some clarification.
Evan, did you have more questions?
No, that was the question.
Any other questions? So, and I think that, do we have, Darby, do you have any questions about this? You clear working with them?
We'll get together, we'll make a plan, can start next week if you want.
Sure, all right, okay. So, I think we should maybe we should have a motion, or are we just giving our consent here? Motion?
We'd like an approval for street closure.
Okay, so I think I would hit, does anyone want to venture a motion, or should you want to give it a shot?
I will make a motion that we support the closure, the trustees support the closure, and ask the manager to do the logistics of closing Railroad Avenue Saturday, September 22nd from 8 to 5 for an artist and maker market, and also on Friday, September 21st from 4 to 10.
And if I can ask you to add, with consultation with the police and fire.
With consultation from police and fire chiefs. And also to provide village support in the public notification of street closure to the tenants on Railroad Avenue.
Second.
Any further discussion, comments, insights? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, guys.
Fantastic.
Thank
Have a
you
great
so
Steam
much.
Fest.
Looking forward to it.
It's gonna be awesome.
We're all gonna have a great Steam Fest.
Yes, we are. It was great
Let us
last
know when you
year.
need volunteers.
It was very, very
We will
good
be putting
last
out
year.
that list soon.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. So, new business, so now we are on to the discussion. Evan, you missed a great meeting. I thought the meeting last week was really good. Just to update, Evan, Regina Mahoney from the RPC came and gave us a really nice overview of the economics of housing, what's driving housing in Chittenden County, how they're approaching it.
That was hugely helpful.
Yeah,
It was very, very
To
helpful.
understand the barriers about affordability for building
Yep.
affordable housing. Just-
Right,
It was
how much
really
they're,
helpful to know.
how much they're spending per, average cost
Yeah.
per unit of
Yeah.
of just
Oh my
regular
gosh, that was
housing in
crazy.
Chittenden County, and, yeah, I thought a lot of it was really good. We then had a really nice discussion with the planning commission afterwards, touched on a lot of different things. I think a lot of these things were things we've heard before, and I tried to write them down, and I didn't know, you know, I didn't want to just say, we had a great discussion, great presentation, great discussion, now on to the next thing. I didn't know if there was something else, and I also wanted to just, I had meant to say it last week, and Evan doesn't know this, but there's a tradition in the trustees, we normally have a retreat somewhere in April or May, usually it's
May.
closer to June, where we kind of don't have a regular meeting, we just kind of stop and talk about stuff, and we talk about initiatives that we would like to see go forward.
Sounds
I'm going to suggest that I think we don't need a retreat this year. I don't know what, it seems like we're having a lot of the stuff we normally talk about is stuff that we're actually doing in terms of consolidation, but I throw that open now, but the reason I'm mentioning it now is that I thought maybe a lot of this stuff is kind of stuff that we've talked about in the past at retreats.
That's
And I
true.
didn't know if in terms of a follow-up on some of these things, if we wanted to make that like our retreat. But that was my thought on this stuff, and now I'll listen to you folks.
So my comment is, with all of the joint meetings we're having with the select board, I think it's difficult for another full day meeting.
Right.
And our meetings tend lately to be shorter than normal. So, you know, to spend half an hour, 45 minutes on a topic at one of our meetings that isn't jam-packed full, I think is more beneficial than doing a whole day. What I do want to make sure that we do, though, you know, there are two things on here, especially the housing committee and the parking committee. You know, I think we need to set some next steps to those and really start moving towards them.
Okay.
No, that, Mike, Lori hit the nail, or hit it right on the head with the head. I was just gonna say, we've got a lot of meetings, joint meetings.
Yeah.
And issues, as you said, George, that we're addressing that we brought up at prior retreats. And I think this is just continuing like what Lori said, with taking some time at our meetings when we have to address issues as they come up. That's fine.
Evan?
I did see a presentation a couple of weeks back with this lady who did it at a regional meeting. So I got a taste of it. I don't know exactly if she did the same presentation, probably not, maybe a little more tailored. But one of the things that came out of that was, you know, back to like communications and communication strategies. The village already allows accessory structures, which is beneficial not only, say, to workforce housing type things where, but it's also allowing some of our elderly homeowners to stay in their homes and be able to afford
Right.
that by supplementing it with an income of a unit. and it brings some density in and around the downtown, which is needed, but maybe not in the 4-store variety, but on a, unit by unit basis. It's not going to provide the number of affordable housing units or even maybe qualify for affordable, whatever that level is, but it can be workforce, it can be people who are downsizing, it can be people who want to live on a certain, maybe a one-level platform, or in any case, starter workforce housing, like some of the positions we have here at the village or the town or in our school systems, where that is something that we can bring in people who could afford to live in our community and not have to drive 30 or 40 minutes from where a lot of our workforce comes from. So I encourage that, and we need to do a better job of communicating those benefits and those regulations that are available to people. They may not even know that we have that availability.
Right.
So I would encourage that from my staff as well, that we do some work on these issues.
Absolutely.
As public information.
Okay. Yeah, I would just say that in terms of, from our takeaways, having a housing committee would be fantastic. I think doing it in partnership with the town, though, since it's not something that only the village is experiencing, but beyond that. In addition, I would love to see there be the needs assessment that we talked about, and whether that's something that the housing committee itself does, or whether that's something that we contract for, I think should be an early task by the committee, and/or by us when we form a committee to help then direct their efforts.
Right.
I agree with Lori on the parking committee, and that one just being something that I think we should do without the town, as it's an us issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we discussed that at the meeting. It was like Elaine said, it makes sense, since this is an issue that cycles through the select board as well. Why wouldn't we do this together? I think that's, Elaine.
On both the housing and the parking committees, I would want them to have a specific charge.
Right.
From this body.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Of what we want them to look for.
Right.
So that there's some direction.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The thing about the retreat, it does seem like all of the topics that we've discussed in previous retreats have caught up to us, and we are actually doing them now, which, part of the purpose of our retreats was to do a little blue sky conversation about what we'd like to see in our community, and we're making all of that come to pass, so that's
Right.
really great.
Yeah.
The one thing that our retreat we tried to do also was to assess our performance and how far we've come, whether we need to keep going on certain things. It would be useful for this body to assess our performance. For example, the select board has what they call a radar list, which is a consistent list of projects that are of importance to them. And some of them are very different from what our board tries to accomplish, but they all have a % complete, which I find a little arbitrary, but at least there's progress noted on it. So I don't know that we've ever been that formal about it, but I do think it's important that we check back on what we said we wanted to do and whether we've accomplished it. Kind of important to do that.
Okay.
So at some point, we need to do that.
Well, let me just carry that forward a little bit. I mean, so how do we find out, what are the things that we've said we want to do? How do we find, how do we do that? Do we make up a list and?
Well, I know did we have a retreat last year?
Yes, we did.
We did, okay, so, right, I would say we go through the minutes, because generally, the minutes were very reflective of what we talked about. And you tended to do a summary memo afterwards of every one of those retreats. And so I would pull those out and just say, did we do that? Did we do that? And we didn't do that.
Okay. Okay, I can do that, and I can bring that get that to Evan for the next meeting.
And while you may not need a full day to retreat, you may want to either put it on an agenda item or do a mini.
Yeah.
Bagels.
Yeah.
As opposed to
no, that sounds good. I mean, a mini, make one of our regular meetings and more a retreat-like.
Like a work session.
Yeah. So the idea is that we would put some of these, have one of these be on our next meeting to talk about, get some parameters and move it forward. Is that the idea?
Sure.
Yeah. And I did say, I thought that Joe Wythe had, you know, I liked his concern that if you create a housing committee, it becomes a permanent housing committee. And, you know, you don't want that to happen. You want a housing committee with a short half-life, one that gets, as you said, you know, you give it a charge, it does the work, it gets done, but it doesn't become a permanent entity here. Unless we want to, but that's a separate decision. But don't let the thing morph into a permanent housing committee. You know, let it accomplish the things that you want to accomplish and then dissolve.
And if I can make a suggestion, when we have a meeting to talk about what that charge would be, it might be beneficial to have someone like Maura Collins come in who knows what the other communities, so South Burlington, Williston, you know, everyone else who has a housing committee and knows the industry. It just might be helpful to have her part of that conversation.
Okay, Dan?
Regarding the housing committee, obviously we would appoint 3, 5, whatever number of people to it. Are these people going to be, I'll put it out there in one, but would you suggest we look for people already, like on the planning commission, or reach out to people outside, but then also on the other end of that, do you want them just to report to us or to report to the planning commission and zoning? And who do they, you know?
Well, I would say
Just
that,
curious.
No, well, I think that the trustees and the select board have the authority to appoint committees. I don't think the planning commission does. So I think the way it would work is we would appoint the committee and they would report to us, but then we would distribute
Disseminate it to the.
who would be on it. That would be a discussion.
Right,
That would be a
right,
topic of
right,
discussion. I think whether we'd want
And it's-
selectmen.
But then that's the thing, I mean, we're gonna be dealing with the town, it's really gonna be interesting, you know, I don't know what the makeup, you know.
Well, it's a good collaborative project.
Yeah, it is great, I think it's a great one.
I would, sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say that creating the charge should also be done with the select board. Perhaps this could go on a
Agreed.
joint meeting agenda.
Yeah.
But I would also like to add that if for some reason the select board does not feel the need to move forward with this, I would still like us to do it on our own.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the way to approach this would be for us to indicate to the select board that we'd like to do this, but for us to have our own meeting and say, what's the deal with the village? What do we want to know for the
I think
village?
that's important.
Because there probably are some pretty distinct things that we would want to know here, so that we would then carry forward. It's not like we're saying, here's what it has to be. We'd be willing to, you know, integrate it with
Right.
what this.
What do we both want, and what are common and what are not common, just
Yeah.
due to our
Yeah.
geography.
Okay. Evan, did you I thought I saw a hand.
Said you're gonna work with the town. I think that, that's a good approach, find out what you really want out of it. A lot of what I would suggest about committees is you establish a sunset.
Yeah, right.
Not only what's their mission, but what's a date that they dissolve unless specifically reestablished or re-upped by the boards. And that way, they also have a time limit, whether it's a year, 2 years, whatever. It's like, please work on this business very hard, make your report, and then you enjoy the rest of your sunset.
Okay, good points. Good point. The other, were there other things on here? And in particular, I thought that Andrew raised the point about affordable housing, and affordable housing for, a lot of the affordable housing is single person, young, up and coming person kind of affordable housing, but not affordable housing for families. How do we get around that? And I thought there was a connection there between what some of the things Regina was saying, which is that for developers, that because they don't make, it's a much harder hill to climb to make back their investment affordable, presented by affordable housing. One of the things that helps lower their initial cost is if they can do business with the municipality and not be trying to purchase the property privately. It's not like I think we should run out and buy property, but I thought it was an interesting point and something for us to talk about. Thoughts about that? Anyone's thoughts about that? I guess we'd have to say how important is affordable housing to us. Maybe this would something that would come out of the study. That
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It
Okay.
would fall under the housing committee.
Sorry to be thinking out loud, but that's.
Yeah.
No, and I totally agree, and the thing is, but affordable housing, when we're thinking about it and how important it is to us, is it affordable, like Regina said, is it affordable housing for people that are living here, working here, staying here? Or is it affordable housing for somebody who's living here, but then going, spending their money and working somewhere
Yeah.
outside, which
Well, it gets
That's-
philosophical, because I think what she was saying is that the Regional Planning Commission is looking at, they're looking at Chittenden County and saying, economic development for the county, whether it's Essex, or maybe South Burlington, or maybe it's Winooski, but overall, for the whole county to grow economically, you need to provide affordable housing for new people to move in and help power and drive the economy. And because it's one community versus another, everybody's benefiting. Now, maybe there's a philosophical, political leap of faith in there. I get it. So but that's
where the onus falls upon the county or the state, as opposed to the separate municipalities, towns, cities, villages, whatever, having to and trying to satisfy different. I think it's got to be that, like she said, the higher view, the bigger picture from the 50,000 foot level. They got a better grasp of what the needs are and can keep it consistent throughout the county or the area, so that it's not what we're building is a little different. We're doing it different than Colchester or whatever. Everyone's throwing their little spin on what they're doing. I just think.
Yeah, gotcha. Andrew, you had a question?
There are a lot of definitions, there are a lot of phrases that get thrown around with affordable housing that I don't know if we all have agreement on what that means. There's just common knowledge of what people assume affordable housing means, and there's regulatory definitions. There's the whole voucher system that gets put onto things, and what does that have to do with the area median income, with the people living in there. I'd rather, what I'd love to see is, this is making me think of, I'd rather have the housing needs assessment results, so we can start the conversation with what does the data show we need,
okay,
and then we can have the charge of the committee to help address that need, instead of us just
doing something. Yeah, gotcha. Good point.
And I could just tell you from several meetings that I've been into with some of our local employers have been at, this is at the top of their list.
Oh, yeah.
Global Foundries, Revision, other companies are saying, we love being here, but attracting and retaining a workforce that is not driving 45 minutes or more to come to work, or being able to attract them at all is high on their list. So it is economic development in and of itself. It is community development. It's a lot of things. As I mentioned with accessory structures, we're a pretty good employer as well, at least we'd like to think so. And we have jobs that start anywhere from $15 an hour and up. And we have a job that we're gonna be posting in a couple of weeks, that we're gonna be in the $40,000 range, and they're gonna have to live somewhere. And so where does someone who's maybe a single earner or whatever that makes $35,000, $40,000, where they live?
Yeah.
And can they afford to live in this community and then stay in this community as they grow into a family or whatever they do? So concerns of ours as well.
Yeah.
And I believe there was a recent press release from Revision around their headquarters relocation.
Yeah.
And not affordable housing, but just the needs of attracting people for their workforce.
Yeah.
This can certainly
Exactly.
contribute to that.
He was one of the speakers at the meeting, as well as others, and we take that to heart. So when we go and do this commission and have a few years of experience just in local government, not necessarily in housing types, people say they want certain things unless you put it in their neighborhood. And it's very, you have to be very careful with what words you use and the phrases you use and what you're trying to attract, but affordable is in the eye of the beholder too.
Yes.
And there's the government version of it and there's the local version of it. So I think that all needs to be part of the review and and working with our partners in this, because you guys are doing many things already with some of the apartments and other things that are being built here. They're not single-family homes, they're not necessarily the typical affordable housing, but they are a lot less expensive than living in Burlington or South Burlington. So we are seeing some changes, but as a holistic approach, I applaud the effort for our commission.
Can I just have one more thing? So the Housing Commission, or committee, whatever we're calling it, I think is gonna take a while to get it going. So more than a parking committee. So I would love to see us have a meeting sometime set aside at our next meeting or the one after, specifically on the parking, and we can get that started, because I think that's a much more concrete, hopefully immediate, shorter term issue we can tackle.
What I'll do is I'll work with Evan to try to dredge up any information, background reading stuff that we need for parking, for the housing committee, anything that you folks want to contribute to that, and then we'll put it on an upcoming agenda and have background, and then we'll have a more focused discussion about how to go forward with it at an upcoming meeting. Okay? Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Anything else on the, anyone else, anything else about the planning commission meeting we had? Okay, so we are now on to the manager's report.
Just for the sake of time, Memorial Day Parade is this Saturday, as you all well know. I was having a conversation with the chief of police, and just getting a sense of how much work goes into our lovely parade, and it is a wonderful parade. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, in the state. It does require road closures.
A lot of road closures, big ones.
Yes. Just to let you know, every police officer works Memorial Day. Every single one of them. Our fire department is working Memorial Day, whether they're in the parade or helping with closures and other things. Public Works is working Memorial Day Parade, and administration, while not necessarily working, have a lot to do with the staffing and discussions and other things. So we enjoy Memorial Day. I just want to let you know, you will also see our presence at Memorial Day from our police department and others, because of recent events in other communities and other parts of the world. We take that and our planning very seriously. And when you do road closures and lots of people, we have no specific threats, let me make that clear, but this is just the precaution of the world we live in today and how we try to deal with large crowds. We do the same things for the events at the convention center. We do the same things for the parade at the high school. We do the same things for Steam Fest and other things. But when you have this large a crowd and street closures for the period of time, it's all hands on deck. But hopefully the weather will hold out and we will have a lovely Memorial Day.
Fantastic.
Have we heard the governor or our federal delegation is walking in the parade? Do you know?
I'm not familiar with that. I believe Chairman Levy is on that.
Yeah, I think they prefer not to say too much about that ahead of time.
Okay, and so my only reason for bringing that up, I'll talk to you offline.
If they are, that will be an added level
Yeah.
that we will, they will address and we will address. George is absolutely correct. They do not like that announced any time in advance, other than to internal. They may tell the chief, but they're not going to widely publicize that. That's at least been my experience.
Everyone else good?
Forward.
Okay. Are you going to be there, Lori?
I'll be sitting in the stands with you.
All right. All right.
We are, one last thing, with all the meetings that we have on merger, consolidation, alignment, We are moving forward. We are working, actually, with the very talented Darby Mayville here on communications about alignment, both internally and externally. Our committee, the alignment group, came up with some great suggestions for morale. We are planning our first in-service day, which is August 1st. All our offices will be closed to the public, but our employees will be doing touring of all the facilities that they never get to go to and meet the people that they never get to meet. But as a workforce, showing them what equipment we use, the buildings we work out of and things like that. We will have a lunch as well that the fire department is going to bring out the grills, so that's nice.
That's great.
We are going to have an employee newsletter to be able to tell people about the progress we're making with alignment and merger, new employees, anniversaries, changes to benefits, because we feel that more communication is needed, as you guys have stated, back to the public. And so we're working on a lot of ways that to do things in an orderly fashion. We are, if you can imagine, we have all different types of departments, not only the fact that we have 2 community development departments, 2 libraries, almost 2 of everything, but we also have different ways each of them is doing certain things that affect the finance department, that affect the HR department, that affect administration and our administration. So we're trying to figure out ways to standardize how we do things. And so a lot of this will also then be coming back before the boards as policy changes or changes to the employee manual or changes to contracts when they come up, so that we're standardizing things. And so it'll be a long process, but we work on them daily, monthly. Maybe they'll make it to a progress report like you just mentioned, but those are the types of things we just do every day.
Fantastic.
Among the weird.
All right. Good. Great. Good to hear, Evan. Thank you. That it? Anything
Yes.
else? Evan, our schedule, do we have it here? Oops, I can't load it. I don't have it. Just want to make sure everyone has the schedule. And everyone, Jan, you're gone, so, yeah, but you're going to be back before, so. So our next joint meeting with the Select Board is here on June 14th. Okay, great. Okay, so we are on to reading file and trustee comments and concerns.
I had one. Huh?
Minutes?
We do the minutes in the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Well,
Almost there.
Sorry.
we do trustee comments and concerns.
That's right.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Something that I believe we had talked about at a previous meeting. I can't recall if this was after the whole Wolf's Art, whatever the V-dub thing is.
Yes.
Or if it was after some other event. But we talked about revisiting our noise ordinance and our waiver process and whether the noise levels are what we want them to be. And I can't recall if this was something that was just in what I call Andrew's utopia or just in my head. Or
It might be.
Actually
Might have been.
about. I live in that world.
An ideal world.
Andrew's utopia.
And if we were going to have some kind of a demonstration from the sound engineers around what these sounds actually equate to, because I know one of the things that I struggle with is when we approve either Class C or whatever it is, I don't know what that means. I don't know the decibel level of give me a number and what that actually means. So giving us an opportunity to better understand what it is we're approving and making sure that's what we want.
So what would you envision happening? What happens after we're talking about sometime this fall, or what? Do we go back and test?
I would assume after the fall,
Yeah.
especially with the sense that CVE is doing their planning and has done their planning for the fair. And I would not want any of this to supersede any of that.
Yeah.
So after that, after the fair, and whether that's something that, if we can recreate those scenarios here and recreate those sound experiences here, if we take a field trip and go somewhere else.
Can I just comment?
Yeah.
I agree with you, it'd be nice to know, but the thing is, there's so much that goes into it, as Tim Shea brought up, and it's, when somebody was here, they were talking about sound and how I forget who came to us and was discussing it, but depending on the weather, there's so many things that play into it and how far away, so certainly you can create a sound, but depending on the environment in which you hear it, whether it's in this room, whether it's outdoors, whether it's humid out, whether it's windy, whether it's what, affects and you know, depends. So it really is.
There are a lot of variables, there's no doubt about it.
You know, I agree with you. It's nice maybe get a general decibel level at this range under these certain, but then, you know, and it's, everyone's gonna have an opinion, but I'm game.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's very important for us to understand it.
the way to go would be to have Evan discuss it with Tim and set something up in the fall at some point.
Great.
Okay.
And just to let you know, I did meet with Tim on other matters, and he is very amenable to making sure that they are not violating things. They are very concerned with the time schedule of when bands wrap up, because they know they are adjacent to residential neighborhoods. They also know very well that when they have a crowd, they only have a couple of exits. And those crowds then leave their facility and basically bottleneck traffic through our village. So, and they can be happening at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and they want people to leave quietly. So he's aware of these things, and I think he would be amenable that maybe even we could do something at a sound check or something like that, so that you would get that and how they do their readings.
Yeah, and just please know that this is not to say that I think CVE is doing anything wrong. That's not where the intent of this is, but it's rather personally, I'll say, I don't know exactly what I'm approving, and I don't know what that means.
Well, it's also probably in anticipation of the annual conversation we have every summer when the event list ends.
Right, well, I'll just make comment also that the Relay for Life used to go through the night. Now they're ending it, they're not going overnight through midnight to the next morning. It ends at like 11 or 12 at night, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whereas it used to run right through to the next morning, and they're not doing that. So,
And I think that you should educate yourselves on what's going on at the CVE. I went to one of their shows just recently at Tim Shea's invitation of what goes on those fairgrounds on any given day during the week or the weekend, and how many thousands of people and the economic activity that is occurring at that thing. They had the Timberland Wood Show, basically all the people who are in the forestry industry. It was massive, it was well attended. The people that are employed from it, the hotel room stays, the food and beverage, and just how they package a show and the economic activity. A show like that cannot be done just anywhere, and it's well done.
And what would be, and I agree, I wholeheartedly support what they do over there, but one thing they don't do is promote the local Essex businesses. So I think that would be something that would be great to have a conversation with. I mean, when the fair comes into town, businesses do horrible business. When they bring in their different things throughout the year, there is no promotion, even a flyer of, these are the local businesses in Essex Junction you could go to. So I would love to have that conversation with Tim at some point.
I think he'd be willing to. I think they're very amenable to having to collaborating with us. I think just no one's really carried the whole thing forward and actually done it.
I agree.
It's just it's usually we talk about it and go, yeah, okay, and then
Right,
we
and
go
then
do
nothing
it.
ever,
Yeah. And I wouldn't, I'm pretty sure he'd be amenable.
Oh, yeah, I'm
One
sure.
of one of the questions I asked him is, do you know how many hotel room stays you generate? Not just in our community, but in all. He goes, no, I don't really know that. I should know that, because room stays is a good predictor of economic activity.
And we've known we needed a hotel downtown for a very long time. There's the Baymont, which is a fairly recent addition. We desperately need a hotel downtown.
And they've even gone through a strategic planning session of what their life is going to be and what they need. And the idea of a hotel on property would help them attract more shows,
Certainly.
and keep them here.
And that's it, the other thing is, the other aspect is, whether it's the NHRA car show with the dragsters, whatever the event, throughout the year, they attend the event, as Lori's saying, then they leave and go to South Burlington, you see them in Shelburne, or Shelburne Road, or what have you, and then leaving our community.
Yeah.
So, like you said, if they get the hotel here, we have it somewhere, they walk from there to their hotel,
Right.
they walk to our stores, they walk to our everything.
Or just to know what's here.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
A lot of our
In and out.
businesses are tucked,
Yeah.
Gilligatties isn't, but, you know, a lot of our businesses are tucked away. And you
Correct.
don't know that
Yeah.
there's some great restaurants here that could be visiting.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay. Anything else? Trustee comments, concerns, reading file? Okay, we are on to the consent agenda.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I will make a motion that pursuant to the open meeting law and 1 VSA Section 313, the trustees go into executive session to discuss a real estate matter where premature public knowledge would place the village of Essex Junction at a substantial disadvantage, and to invite the unified manager and assistant manager, and Darby, you coming? Okay, just the unified manager to attend.
Second?
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we will take a short 5-minute break to clear the room.
Very nice.